Hello there! I think the previous episode might have been the most talking I've done in a while. As for the following few episodes, I don't have much to say since most of the footage speaks for itself. For this episode, I wanted to talk about each ally, their suited matchups, and I want to show you how well they performed on their limit floors. Xiao, the cat girl I named Nilla, uses a slingshot. Ranged weapons are a bit disastrous without using lock-on, or at least possessing good control over the terrible camera. If there was one thing in this entire playthrough that I felt hindered the experience, it would be the camera. At any rate, once locked on to an enemy, Xiao can dispense of most enemies fairly easily. She's good against airborne enemies like bats or insects, and she can take out slow, larger foes like dragons. But if your weapon isn't up to snuff, I'd limit her to the first two. Xiao's weakness, in my experience, are grounded enemies that are capable of jumping, the most notable of which happen to be mimics. Here we go. Gallery of Time. 300 years ago. Nilla. Hard shooter. Alright, Nilla, we got this. Clock hands. All we gotta do is find the exit, which I'm pretty sure is right here. Touch the clock face, let's go. Goro is pretty good at exchanges, and what I mean by that is he's really good against enemies you've memorized attack patterns to. There are some enemies that wait until you're in close range before they attack, and he's very weak against those. However, enemies that go through specific patterns of attack will usually leave themselves wide open for him. Goro is especially good against ranged enemies that typically try jumping backwards in retreat. This is because they want to create as much distance between the two of you before they feel comfortable attacking. And since Goro's hammers and axes usually have impressive attack power, he can usually one-shot or two-shot most foes. His other strength is that he's invulnerable when executing his charged attack. If you let go of the X button right as the enemy begins attacking you, you're almost guaranteed to eliminate them. Goro's clear weakness is nimble enemies. They retreat far too quickly for him to catch up, and they deliver melee attacks quicker than he can. If you can perfect charged attacks, even they can't hurt you, but it's still fairly difficult to stick damage on them. Goro. Oh my boy, he's got this. Okay. Well, it would be nice to not be gooed. Get wrecked. Clock hands. Easy. Now all we gotta do is find the way out, which I think we actually already passed up. Touch the clock face. Ruby can handle pretty much everything you can throw at her. The sheer fact that the game forces you to build up every element on her anyway means she has an answer for every elemental weakness. There are various foes like the dragons or the pirate's chariot that punish players who attempt to fight them with melee. Ruby is able to hit these foes and strafe to safety when the enemy retaliates. Against non-specific foes, Ruby can typically use her charged attack to great effect. However, more agile foes tend to move out of the way far too frequently to bother using it. Ruby's only weakness would be the humanoid elementals as well as the mask enemy types, since they frequently block ranged attacks. However, despite this weakness, the humanoid elementals aren't very quick at dodging and usually fall in one hit anyway, and while the masks have a very annoying tendency to block at any given moment, it's also fairly easy to bait them into performing a melee attack and hitting them while they're stuck in their attack animation. So, if you have learned your enemy matchups by this point, there really isn't any enemy she can't handle. Alright. There we go. What's in here, I wonder? A magical crystal. Tells us where at least all of the items are, and where to find enemies if I'm really stuck. Here's the exit. Alright, head in the direction of the enemies. There we go. Clock hands. Gaga. I don't know if I kept the footage or not, but at one point I joked about how funny or amusing it would be to me to just give him a simple name like Roger, but I guess Nil is the only one whose name I've bothered to change, so sorry about that. Gaga can do everything Toan can do. However, he trades range for speed and mobility, so while Gaga's reach is much further, Toan feels much faster. That said, if you're able to stun an enemy with Gaga, there is very little chance they'll be able to hit you back. That said, his matchups have some concerning limits. He doesn't get invulnerability with his charge attacks like Goro does, and I feel similar to Toan, this man needs his combos to pull off satisfying damage. That said, if Toan can fight it, Gaga probably can too. And if you don't mind constantly repairing his weapon, Gaga's charged attacks make enemies think twice before approaching you. The sheer amount of times I've seen enemies strafe away from him while I perform his charged attacks would likely be innumerable if I used it beyond what I'm required to. Gaga. Alright, he's a little rusty. He's not so good at fighting. But he does have superior reach. Good job, Gaga. Alright, well, at least we know where the exit is. Oh god. Is that it? That is it. We're out of here. Ostman is a weird one. I don't think I really like his machine guns. I think they are serviceable with enough points in the anti-categories, but I really wasn't feeling it. His elemental flamethrowers are surprisingly good though. They do force him to fight in the same mid-range as Gaga, but the fact he can swiftly strafe to avoid getting hit means that Ostman can take out most earth-based creatures in seconds flat. Golems, dune variety creatures, and large enemies I normally have Goro fight are all very easily dispatched of with Ostman. It probably doesn't hurt that gemstones provide both 10 points of an element as well as 10 points to 2 categories of anti, so there's that too. Ostman's main weakness that I've observed is that he can't brush past enemies the same way the others can. Even with Dran's Feather, most characters can just run right on by in narrow hallways and avoid battle altogether, but Ostman just gets stomped. Speaking of, if the enemy has to take time to reposition itself before attacking, Ostman is fairly serviceable in terms of handling it. On the other hand, spry little things that are quite agile, not his strongest suit. He usually gets hit the moment he gets back up. He doesn't take advantage of damage immunity the same way the others do when they tank hits. There's also this phenomenon I encounter where his weapon occasionally locks up and you have to stop pressing buttons before you're allowed to attack again. That said, the durability on his weapon is something awful. Always pay attention to it or you will be very upset with yourself. All right, Ostman, you got this. Hey, he's doing not half bad. They fall pretty easily. As long as there's no mimics, he's not very good at fighting those. Wow, already. And let's just blast our way through. Well, I think we survived the trials. All the allies did a phenomenal job. Well, that's it. It's now time for our final test. The final boss. Wish me luck.